speaker on the other side or something? It's loud.
I do.
Yeah, we got it. Welcome everybody to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center and GoLocal Live. My name is Josh Fenton. I'm in today on the 3 o'clock hour, maybe just a little bit on the 4 o'clock hour. We've got Kobe Dennis here, candidate for Mayor of Providence.
Right.
Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. The big excitement here, not that you're not the big excitement, was the kickoff of the Alex and Ani Lounge. And we had Frank Lamontia on today, really emerging, super talented country singer out of Cranston, and it was just a pleasure having him. You can go to any of our social media assets and hear him sing a couple just tremendous songs live here as well. City of Providence, let's go right into the hornet's nest. Traffic cameras. This was a big sneak up. I don't think anybody knew it was coming.
No.
And it was, you know, we're now at about 2.5 months. They've issued about 20,000 tickets at $95 each. Some poor people have gotten hit 3, 4, 5, 6 times, not even knowing that there was a camera there. Why wasn't there any public education on this whole idea?
Well, and that's, you know, first of all, thanks for having me on. And that's one of the problems that I had with this whole rollout, the lack of a rollout.
Yeah.
Everything, Josh, is data driven. So why wouldn't we get the proper data from the fire department, the police department, the school officials, even the community members before we rolled out something like this?
So, listen, we get all the press releases, we look at all the police logs, we see where there's issues of crime. We generally don't write about the individual shooting or the individual knifing, we write about the trends.
Correct.
TV stations like the individual ones, we look at kind of the broader issues. There really hasn't been an issue of public safety related to, quote, school zones, and in some cases, it's really hard to see how these traffic cameras are in any way tied to a school zone. In the case of one near where we live on the east side, it's on Arlington Avenue. Moses Brown is nearby. Hope High School's nowhere nearby. And it would just seem like if you were really trying to protect safety, you've already got a crossing guard. The place that you might need it is over by Martin Luther King Elementary School on Camp and Doyle, where, you know, those are busy streets. You've got a crossing guard there. Why wouldn't you put the traffic camera over there to try and reduce speed?
I mean, Josh, these are some of the questions that the community members, thousands of community members have been reaching out to me about. First of all, I think it's very disrespectful to put it under the guise of public safety. I just think that's shameful, actually, and embarrassing. What we need to realize is that this was put out, this is a money grab, as everyone's calling it. And, you know, it's for money. And I understand we're in a crunch financially here, but this is not, we don't hurt the people. People are hurting right now. And $95 is a lot of money to me, it's a lot of money to you, and we should know about things like this coming up in our city.
So I had a lunch last week with a prominent arts organization director, and he said, listen, these things start to build on each other. You know, a lot of the people who come into the city that go to, you know, Vets or PPAC or Trinity or any of the places that bring people from outside the city in, go to dinner, pay a parking fee, they start to get concerns. There's break-ins in the cars, there's parking meters, there's a sense that it's not safe, and then you add this in. And if I live in Coventry or Johnston or someplace like that, it starts to wear on me that I don't want to go into the city of Providence. I don't even know where these traffic cams are. They're not marked. It's clearly not. I mean, you'd put a warning beacon light in most school zones in suburban areas. There's a blinking school light.
Well, that's the thing, Josh. People are coming from out of the city, and they're so used to proper signage and lighting and warnings, and then they come into Providence. Yes, we should slow down. Everyone keeps saying that. I understand that. But we're talking 3 to 5 miles over the speed limit. The 11, I've seen the tickets myself. I haven't been issued one yet, luckily, but I've seen the tickets. It's 3 to 5 miles over. It's to 8 o'clock at night. There's no school children at school. It's Saturdays. What is it? That right there is unfair to the people. And yes, we're talking about the people outside of the city, but I'm very concerned about the people within the city. This is a burden. This is not about public safety, and that's just too bad that they're trying to pose it as such.
So I've been somewhat surprised at being an ex-Providence City Councilman that council members haven't come forward more vigorously. Is it deference to the mayor and the mayor's proposal? Is it not sure what to do? Is it, well, hey, listen, we're grabbing a lot of revenue. Why isn't the council a little bit more mobilized on this thing? They seem to be, David Salvatore was, I think, had every opinion last week.
Right.
So he was for it. He was questioned it. Then he wants to derail it, but he still favors it and thinks it should be studied. Wouldn't the studying process take place at the beginning of the process? When you deploy one, see how it worked, do a public education program about it. Talk a little bit about the council. Are you surprised at council members not being a little more vigorous?
Well, I'm surprised and actually a little disappointed. As we see on the state level, Mr. Craven came out and pretty much apologized and said, look, if I would have knew cities and towns were going to abuse it like this, I would have worded it a little differently and I would have put it out. So they're trying to revise it. City council members are kind of backpedaling now, and they're on the fence. It is an election year, people, so remember that. A lot of times, during election years, they don't know which way to go. They want to be with the mayor a little, and they want to be with the people, but we're looking for some people to come out. I would hope the city council members would come out and say, we need to get rid of these cameras.
Just on the city council, they really do represent, most people represent, even if you're the third ward of Providence City Council where I was, you have a large number of folks who are, paycheck to paycheck folks.
Absolutely.
An extra hit on this, really, when, it's been Le Mans for decades. No one's ever gotten a speeding ticket in the city of Providence in the last 10 years. And now all of a sudden it's the sneaky little cameras. It's going to hurt folks' ability to pay their basic bills. Do you anticipate that the council says, first, stop, no more of these, because there's a plan to deploy more of them. Second of all is to change the process. Maybe the first time is a warning letter. Maybe the second one is a $25 fine. Maybe the third one is a $75 fine.
And that's what my hopes. My hopes is that they just stop them right now totally. So once again, as I'm running for mayor, right now people are asking me what I would do. And right now at this present time, get rid of the cameras. Let's sit down like we should have did from the beginning with the people, with statisticians. We need to definitely see what's going on. What areas? How did we figure out, Josh, where to put them? That's a little ridiculous. I live in Providence, born and raised here, and those aren't the areas where people are speeding. There's plenty of other places where people are speeding and could use some public safety.
There's one on our street. It's actually not where people speed.
Right.
There's a long stretch of about 5 city blocks where people go racing up and hit upwards of 50 miles an hour.
What's the one on the east side, Butler? Is that one on
No,
Butler?
That one's bad too.
That one's bad?
And that's a high speed zone, but it's still, again, it's not in the right location to really reduce speed. If you were going to say any place on the east side where you're really trying to protect children and their families, you'd put it over by Martin Luther King, either on Doyle or on Camp, because that's where the traffic really can sometimes get going pretty good, coming down or up Doyle. Busy area, University Heights down at the base. We're over on Arlington, and they just put it in an area. It doesn't even, it literally doesn't make any sense. Let's go up to the State House. Kate Nagel, our news editor. Last week we were live up at the State House, and a number of state representatives, Republicans, came on and said, hey, listen, we had forewarned on this thing that enabling cities and towns to do this kind of program is going to create exactly these kind of programs, kind of a taxation without representation, and that it would be a regressive tax that would hit poor people more often than not. The speaker, we caught up with the speaker, I think that same day, and the speaker said, hey, listen, we're going to look at this thing. Is this an example of where you think you can make a difference, that you'd go and have those conversations with the speaker, with legislative leaders, and have a better narrative, a better conversation about what you're trying to do versus what the program's trying to do?
Absolutely. I think my relationships with a lot of legislative folks, city council members, and plus the community, law enforcement, fire, I think I would be able to broker these relationships a little bit better. Of course, I need help from city council, but definitely starting from the bottom, which would be the people on the ground that are affected by this. Then I'd work my way up, city council members. Then I, definitely in talks with legislators. We have to talk about this stuff before we roll out things that are going to affect the people in such a negative way. This, we have to get revenue, Josh. I get that.
Right.
But there's different ways about it, and sneaking and doing these little, money grabs on the side, because this is not the first one. It's not really good for the people.
Anthony Cioni, community activist who is involved with Leah Metz and getting Davy Lopes Pool, worked with us, giving us a lot of information, has really driven the...
Ban the cam.
Yeah, he has banned the cam.
Ban the cam.
And he's going to rally tomorrow night over at the city council meeting. Do you think there's going to be a good turnout today? Are you going to be there? Are you going to get folks out there?
I'll be there. I'm going to get people there, but I want to get people there and I want to educate folks. I'm sure a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions for me and Anthony, and we want to educate folks. But come out there and speak, speak your mind. Let them know that you're unhappy with what's going on, and hopefully they'll see the passion from the people, and maybe they'll change up a little bit.
He built a Facebook page maybe a week and a half ago, and it's got 12, 13, 1,400 people.
I've been on it many times. Anthony, good job out there, by the way.
And he's a part-time Uber driver, I think, and he sees it all. I think we'd written the very first article about it, which was tied to when they first were deployed, the amount of vandalism that these things are seeing, because people are really, from the day they were launched, upset about them.
No, from the day, myself and my brother, lifelong community members of South Providence, we were literally looking at this monstrosity as, what is this? Man, it's some type of camera. It's like something had fallen from the sky. And then here we go 3 weeks later, community members are coming to us, Kobe, I just got a $95 ticket. I'm like, from what? So it's a bad thing all the way around. We need to get rid of the cameras. Let's revisit this revenue grab, and let's ask the people what they would like to see from this.
Let's talk about a couple other issues. Students across the state, and especially in Providence, left school late this morning to march up to the State House to demonstrate their concerns about these mass shootings that are taking place in schools. Obviously, Florida's been the most recent, capture of headlines. But sadly, when you go and look at all the school shooting, it's really a remarkable thing. We've been blessed here, knock on wood, that we haven't had an incident like this. What did you think of the students demonstrating today? Well,
I have one word for it: courageous. I think the students demonstrated a lot of bravery, and I'm glad that they had the inevitability to get together, galvanize, and walk to the State House to let people know how they feel. I was involved in the walk. A lot of adults in the community were involved in the walk, and it was nice to see media out there supporting the kids and interviewing the kids. It makes them really feel like this is a true movement.
And there were thousands.
It was thousands.
If not tens of thousands.
I would say definitely thousands I've seen. Yeah, but right now it's still going on.
Yeah.
So it's a full day.
And they're up at the State House, and they're trying to get in, security up at the State House. It is interesting that, some of the folks who are decision makers in the state, one, are in a building with security, with armed guards.
Yeah, it was kind of ironic that they were being searched for guns at an anti-gun rally.
And in the case of many high-level elected officials, regardless of their position on gun control, they are protected by law enforcement officials who are armed.
Oh, that's a great point.
And I think there's a mounting pressure. Washington doesn't look like it's going to do anything again. What's your sense of here in Rhode Island?
Man, I'm just hoping. I don't know. I want to be optimistic about this and not be a naysayer. But I'm hoping if the kids keep the pressure on, if the kids continue to do what they're doing, hopefully there'll be some change. But we've been here before, John.
Absolutely.
We've been around. You're a lifelong Rhode Islander, so we've been around and we know what happens. But our job as adults, trying to cultivate, these youth to be better leaders, our job is to tell them to keep pushing forward.
Well, listen, I think all of us were shocked. I think if there was ever a seminal moment before this one in Florida was when Newtown took place, and you had literally dozens of babies killed in their classroom. You thought, oh, that's the incident that's going to take place. It was December. So. And that was one of those incidents that, space shuttle, etc., that you literally remember where you were when you heard the news of Newtown.
It's horrible.
And so, listen, there's this claim that there's one solution, one type of ban, one kind of control, I think is a fool's errand. It's going to take a series of different steps, and hopefully all of them combined will have some impact on limiting access for those who shouldn't have access to guns, and limiting ability to gain access to places and things like that. Providence crime rate, if you, we've both been around a long time. I've never heard a mayor talk about that the crime rate's going up. It's always going down. Wow. I don't want to say they cook the numbers over there, but I think if you talk to police officers who are working different areas. They will say how they report and write things is different than before. What is the state of public safety in Providence right now?
Oh boy, it's a tough question right now. But what I would say, talking to the constituents, that we're feeling pretty safe, and I believe that the crime is probably leveled out. As far as, it depends, we're talking about petty crime,
Yeah.
violent crime, burglary, so on and so forth. There's different categories to it. But what I don't like, Josh, is when they take, just pick a year out of the blue, 1989, and then they say, oh, the crime's down compared to 1989. And where do we get that from? So this, it's a data-driven time. We need to, let's do it properly. And these are some of the tactics that they do when it comes to the budget, saying that we have, a surplus.
Right.
Some of the things we do with crime, saying that the city's safe, but yet, they'll just put out things like the cameras whenever they feel like it. So it's tough to deal with.
After, obviously the issue du jour, just because it's hit so many people, and I think people are so upset about it, are the traffic cameras. What's the other issues facing voters that as you talk to people, that you hear the most back from, that they're most concerned about, that they want to see change and improvement about?
Oh boy, I would say the number one thing is probably the schools, and not the safety of the schools. And that's what kind of bothered me a lot about this. We're talking about school safety, which is not at, that's why it was a knee-jerk decision, because it was kind of a national thing going on. But if we're talking right here to Providence residents, who this is affecting the most right now, they would say, how about try to fix our schools? How about that? The entrances, even the crosswalks. We could have brightened them up. We could put signs outside or so on and so forth. But just to go with the cameras, we know that the people are smarter than this. That's the one thing. I respect the people to the fullest. I know how smart the constituents are out there. I know how smart my neighbors are out there. And I just think this is disrespectful. But I would say education would probably be the number one thing that I hear about. We need help.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the performance of the schools in Providence, this is not this mayor's fault or his predecessor. This has gone on, but it's one of those third rail issues. Nobody's really got the guts to talk about it. And I use it as an example. At Central High School, those reading at grade level at Central High School are 9%, 10%. Those who can pass math at grade level are 12%, something right around there. It's single digits, high
And then
teens.
you go right across the quad to classical.
Yeah. And it's
they're
better,
right,
but it's still not a grand slam
It's not that
home
great.
run.
But that's one of the things that bothers me, Josh, about the Providence school system is just the difference and the variance from school to school.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to get it together, all right? And this is not a knock against the teachers. Every time I do an interview, Josh, I get all these calls and emails about, you're so against the teachers. I'm not against the teachers. This is all about faults. I'm one of the people.
Well, listen, it predates every
Absolutely.
single teacher virtually that's in the school system. I got elected in 1991.
Wow.
I took office. It was the same then.
Right.
And nobody really wants to take it on as an issue. And I think, whoever's going to be the next great mayor, which I'm not sure anybody would say, is going to be the one that's fixed the schools. If this Providence had great schools, like suburban level schools where kids were flying out of here going to college or flying out into the trades, this would be the number one city in the country.
Right.
And it's not too big to be able to fix a problem like that.
Right. So,
accordingly. Listen, I want to thank you for coming
appreciate
on.
it.
And as always, informative. Best of luck in the campaign.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank you
probably
all out
see
there.
you tomorrow night over at the city council meeting.
Absolutely.
Kobe Dennis, candidate for mayor of Providence, here on GoLocal Live. We're going to take a 1-second break, and we're going to get a Skype going with Colin Reed, DC consultant, with a lot of insights on what's going on down in Washington. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I am Josh Fenton, and want to thank Kobe Dennis, candidate for Mayor of Providence, who's just on talking about the new traffic cameras and all the controversies related to the implementation of those. 20,000 tickets at $95 issued in about 2.5 months. I want to welcome on Colin Reed, big-time Washington consultant, formerly worked for Scott Brown and a whole host of other folks down in D.C. Colin, are you part of the swamp? Do you count as part of the swamp?
Well, New England's always been my home, Josh, but I guess technically, yes. I am firmly ensconced in the swamp now.
Congratulations. You are one of those people. Every week we have Jennifer Lawless, professor over at American University on, and we usually have a couple other of you smart DC folks, and I really want to welcome you. You've got a lot of insights and been down there and have some real expertise. Let's start off by talking about Congressional Race 18, District 18 in Pennsylvania, probably a congressional district that no one has ever talked about in the history of politics before the last 2 or 3 months. It's actually a district that'll be going away because it's been declared a illegal district, and I believe the Supreme Court down there in Pennsylvania is redrawn the lines. But it is the battleground of Republicans and Democrats right now, and it looks like a lock-solid Republican seat that even a Democrat didn't run in the last 2 cycles is going to turn from red to blue. Give us your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right, Josh. I mean, this seat will cease to exist come November, so when the history books are all written, I think this will largely be a blip, albeit a very expensive blip on the radar. And there's no doubt about it. It's not a good night for Republicans when they're having to fight and claw it out and go to a recount in a district that the president won by 20 points 2 years ago. So there's warning signs. And I think the NRCC chairman, Steve Stivers, has been out there today warning his members that this is indeed a wake-up call. But I do think that Democrats would be remiss if they looked to this race as a blueprint for how they can win across the country. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, their candidate, Connor Lamb, who credit where credit's due, he ran a very good race, but he ran essentially as a Republican light. Denounced Pelosi. He praised Donald Trump. He ran as not only someone who was a pro-gun candidate, he ran as someone who featured an assault weapon that many members of his party are trying to ban in a campaign commercial. And that's just those aren't the things that a Democratic candidate can do across the country who face primary challenges. So, you know, I think last night was a wake-up call for the Republicans, but I don't think it's something the Democrats can look to and say, okay, now we've got a recipe for success in other places across the country.
There are a lot of districts that, swing their purple districts 2 or 3 points either way from Republican or Democrats. Is potentially Connor Lamb the model that you want to clone if you're Democrats to be able to run across the country? That you can't be a Bernie Sanders Democrat and in these fringe swing districts really be able to beat anybody on a significant level. Isn't that the takeaway for Democrats, that they've got to find more mainstream candidates?
You have to do the opposite of what Connor Lamb did in Pennsylvania, right. Which is what you can to take away as many of the kind of wedge issues the other side will use against you. And if you're a Republican running in New England, you got to run as someone who's strong on the environment, who's strong on gun control, who's strong on issues that the Democrats like to run against Republicans on in the blue parts of the country. And Connor Lamb did the reverse of that in Pennsylvania. But look, if you look across the country, down in Houston right now, there's another competitive House race where the Democrats have a large field that they've got running against John Culberson in the 7th Congressional District in Houston, one of these candidates was openly attacked by the Democratic establishment here in D.C. for being too unelectable. So it's kind of the reverse Tea Party in a number of ways.
Right.
We saw it in 2010 and 2012 on the Republican side in primaries is now happening on the Democratic side. And what happened in Houston was a huge disaster for the Democrats because it led to this inter-party warfare between the Bernie Sanders crew and the so-called establishment. So the model works if their base and their primary voters will let them. But right now, I don't think they will, because the party is run by the likes of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, more so than the middle of the roaders who would be willing to cut compromises to elect good candidates.
Listen, you work for Scott Brown. You're a key part of his team. Let's talk about Elizabeth Warren. This past weekend, a couple of things happened that were newsworthy. One, she refused Chuck Todd's request, and he wasn't the first one to suggest it, that she take a DNA test and put this whole issue of whether or not she's a Native American to rest. This issue has come up throughout her entire career. There are those who claim that she got benefits in her teaching positions because she claimed to be a Native American. Our own Bob Whitcomb, columnist, has suggested the same, that, listen, get past this issue, it's just burdensome. And with Chuck Todd, she ducked and dodged. It reminded me of a rope-a-dope that I had seen Muhammad Ali do against George Foreman back in the battle in Zaire, I think it was. Does she have to address this issue at some point?
A couple of things on Elizabeth Warren. Number one, I found her answers on Sunday about whether she's running for president, I found them very Clinton-esque. She basically said, I am not currently running for president in the current tense. Of course, leaving herself plenty of wiggle room if she decides to run down the road. But the other point is this issue for her, if she fails to find a convincing answer, something that's going to clear the decks and put it to rest once and for all, she risks running the way Hillary Clinton did with her vote for the Iraq War. Right. It was something she just couldn't shake, and it followed her around. Or whether, Secretary Clinton's email problems in the most recent campaign. In politics, the best thing to put these questions to rest is to answer them once and for all. But when the truth is so bad, you can't do that, that's when it lingers. And voters are pretty willing to forgive if you admit error, accept responsibility, and ask for forgiveness. But that's something that Senator Warren has not done. And, the whole DNA test and the name calling, I think it kind of misses the mark in many ways, because it's never been about whether or not she's Native American. It's whether or not she used that claim to get a professional advantage she wasn't entitled to.
Right.
And if she really wants to put that question to rest, she could authorize the release of all her employment applications to all the schools she worked at, and it would say whether or not she was Native American. But she would never do that. And she is the one who has the ability to put the question to rest. I just don't think she wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump to her response to Chuck Todd's question about, is she running for president in 2020? Obviously, listen, there's lots of points of views on who's the perfect Democrat. It's pretty clear right now that the Democrats do not have a strategy for the 2020 election that anybody, certainly in the media, is able to decipher. Let's talk about her. Is she really a viable, listen, you've worked up here in New England. We live in New England. She's a prolific fundraiser, no two ways about it. You saw the weight of her fundraising ability against Scott Brown in Massachusetts. The combination of the two of them, I think, raised close to $90 million. Let's talk about her. Is she really the type of candidate that Americans are going to support in a Democratic primary and then in a general election?
Well, in a Democratic primary, I think she would have a strong lane of support. I think the complicating factor potentially for her is another New Englander, and that's Senator Bernie Sanders. He's someone who, although he refuses to register or identify as a Democratic member of the Democratic Party, he ran and got more than 12 million votes in 2016. And he's everywhere on TV. He's prolific in terms of maintaining his presence. So by all accounts, it appears as though he's going to run again. So Senator Sanders and Senator Warren would occupy a similar lane in a primary in terms of getting that far left lane. So they'd be splitting their own votes. But the other thing that I think has flown a bit under the radar staying here in New England is former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. Yeah. Also has very much left the option of running for president on the table. He is someone who, despite challenges during his 2 terms on Beacon Hill, He left with high approval ratings. He's a gifted campaigner, and he's someone else who I don't think can be taken too lightly. Although he now works at Bain Capital, which, as you remember from 2012, was quite a boogeyman for the Democrats in their campaign against Mitt Romney. So
Yeah,
that would be.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Deval Patrick. Clearly, he had worked in corporate America before he became governor. I think he was chief legal counsel at Coca-Cola, I think, or one of the major corporations. Served on many national corporate boards. Was a prolific fundraiser. Is that a swing back towards? And I don't just mean for racial reasons, but also ideology, political connections. They were good friends. Is that a swing back to Barack Obama? Is that saying, hey, listen, we did pretty well under Obama. He was a candidate that could bring folks together. Maybe Deval Patrick could as well.
Yeah, and they do share some of the same political advisors, and so it's a fair comparison to make on a number of levels. I think Governor Patrick could do well in a primary. I do think his Bain connections could be problematic, and that's through the lens of a Democratic primary voter because Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have dragged this party so far to the left. Who can forget how Hillary Clinton's paid speeches to Wall Street banks? That was a political liability in 2016 when the party's only moved further to the left since then. So he'd have a similar challenge there. But it gets to a larger point, Josh, which is the field is so wide open. It could be in 2020 for the Democrats. Could be, again, we were talking about how the Tea Party has kind of come from the Republicans to the Democrats. They could have what we had in 2016, which is a huge crowded primary field where many, many different qualified people are competing for the same slice of pie. And it's a jump ball as to who emerges. And one of the reasons that Donald Trump was able to move so successfully through the 2016 Republican primary is because he had that lane all to himself while everybody else was fighting for the same scrap of voters. So I think a lot of what's going to play out is going to be based on who all is in the race in that regard.
Let's just, is there a mainstream Democrat, regardless if he can win the primary, who certainly would be better suited for a general election? Is there anybody emerging from these governors, state houses across the country, a former senator, anybody like that, that is starting to percolate, is starting to do those trips to Iowa and New Hampshire, that could be more like a Bill Clinton, a more mainstream, perceived to be kind of pro-business Democrat?
You know, the obvious name who comes to mind is former Vice President Joe Biden.
Right.
And it keeps popping up, although he'd be close to 80 in 2020. Although I guess in today's political age, 80 may be the new 60. Who knows?
Yeah.
But again, would he have a free lane to the primary? I don't think so. He would have 4 decades of votes he's taken in the Senate. And as someone who comes from the research world, it's very easy to go through reams and reams of roll call votes and find things that are politically unpopular and make them problematic in a primary.
Sure.
But one other of the trends, in addition to it being a very crowded field, is that most of the leading contenders right now for the Democratic nomination, they come from either the Northeast or the West Coast. There are not a lot of strong challengers emerging from the Midwest or from those quote unquote flyover states.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting to the White House at its core, it's about math, and it's about getting to 270 electoral votes. And Donald Trump's path in 2016, it went through states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan. He turned states red that hadn't been red in 25 years.
Right.
Unfortunately, our home state, you know, where I come from and where you come from, they're never going to be political battlegrounds, at least for the immediate future. Maybe New Hampshire, but even that's getting really blue. So if the Democrats were looking at a way to deprive Donald Trump of his 270 electoral votes that he's going to need to get reelected, I think they should be looking at some of those states in the middle of the country. And right now it appears they don't really have any strong contenders from that part of the world.
Will the Republicans, listen, it's been an amazing 2-year cycle, right? The election was in November 2016, and literally the energy around politics has not let up for a nanosecond. This is a very unusual situation. News consumption's high. Listen, we benefit from it as a news organization. I'm sure the busyness of that you're having is at a much higher pace than an off-year midterm election cycle. Let's just talk a little bit. We're going to be on the midterms in a matter of just a few months. We're going to be almost immediately out of it right into a presidential campaign. Is Donald Trump going to see a significant campaign a challenge in the Republican primary from a viable Republican?
I don't think so, barring any sort of bombshell that comes out of the Mueller investigation or a change of heart from President Trump. He's been pretty clear, going back to the day he was inaugurated, that he intends to run for re-election.
Yeah.
And approval ratings, while they have struggled with swing and middle-of-the-road voters, they've remained very strong with Republican primary voters. So if I were a betting man, I would say no.
Okay. And if he did see someone, a Jeff Flake or somebody like that, I don't know if that's a viable one, but one of these pushed aside, more moderate Republicans who wants to go back to a little bit more mainstream Republican values and offer a more stable alternative, if that person picked up some energy, would he jump to be a third-party candidate and really make a mess of the two parties?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think as both parties have moved further to their respective left and right, that there have been folks in the middle who have not found, who've been unable to kind of find a home that they're comfortable with. And where that goes, I don't know. Right now, the two parties have a pretty firm grasp on things, but you could see at some point down the road more of a middle-of-the-road block forming. But it wouldn't just be Republicans; it would also be Democrats.
Yeah.
Because it would be the people who are uncomfortable with socialists like Bernie Sanders or extremists like Elizabeth Warren becoming the leaders of their party as well. I think those two have kind of co-opted the ideas and the ideology, and certainly the energy of the base is behind people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. But if they fully took over the reins of power, then I think you could see kind of a disaffected middle block forming. But I think it would come from both parties, not one or the other.
Listen, I appreciate it, Colin. Super insightful. There's been so much change at the White House. When does your number come up? You've got to have a stint over there at the Trump White House.
No, I'm very happy sitting here talking to you, Josh.
It doesn't get better than that, but not a chance of being, let's see, what's open today? Commerce is full. State has now been replaced. CIA, I guess, it's moving chairs all the time.
I tell you, I'd like to go visit my old boss, Scott Brown, who's the ambassador to New Zealand, but that'll be on vacation purposes only.
I think that should be a business trip. GoLocal would be happy to accompany you.
Yeah.
We'll talk to our friends over at TF Green and see if we can get a direct flight to New Zealand. Maybe we'll stop in Hawaii just for some rest on the way, hit Fiji for a couple days. But I think that's a very good point. We should head down there, fact-finding mission, to be able to find out directly from Scott Brown what the issues are down in that area of the Pacific.
And make sure the people of New Zealand get to experience some Narragansetts. I don't believe their distribution goes that far, so we can do that as well.
That's great. Hey, listen, Colin, thanks so much for Skyping in. We hope we can get you on a regular basis. This year is, nonstop politics. We've got Bob Flanders coming on in about 20 minutes, and stay tuned for that one. He's taken a pretty good shot at Sheldon Whitehouse on his votes and investments on opiate manufacturers. So that should be interesting. But hopefully we can get you back in the near term. Thanks so much for Skyping in.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you. We'll be right back in about 2 seconds. Let's call it 25 seconds with folks from Commerce RI talking about a really big economic initiative with the Volvo races stopping. Their only U.S. stop is in Newport, Rhode Island. Big numbers coming out of Spain where they just were, where they fueled about 100 million euros into the Spanish economy. So we'll be right back. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. It has been as busy a day as you can get in the news media world. We start off today at 2 o'clock, kicking off the Alex and Ani Lounge with live music. Amazing little performance from Mickey LaMantia. Really superstar emerging country singer, rated by Rolling Stones as one of the 10 country singers to watch in 2018. Then we jumped over to Kobe Dennis, who's running for mayor of Providence, talking about the very popular traffic cameras, and then we had Colin Reed, DC consultant, talking about everything from where the presidential campaigns are going, the midterm elections, and what the Pennsylvania race in Congressional District 18 in Pennsylvania meant for the bigger, broader things of the popularity of the president and the ability of Democrats to recapture Congress in the midterms elections. I want to welcome Lara. Lara's Chief Marketing Officer over at Commerce RI. Do you own all the snow? Are you responsible for the snow?
I am not.
You are
It is a beautiful winter wonderland. I did say that this morning, but I think we're ready for spring, right?
You are ready for spring. Can you guys do something? Give a tax incentive to something to get rid of the snow?
I can only pray to God, Mother Nature.
Only pray to God. We got home last night, and one of our front trees, we've kind of too pretty, literally had fallen over, crashed into our front door.
But no lines down.
Nothing broken. No lines down
That's
or
all that
anything
matters.
else. Just
Electricity.
chop that bad boy up and take it away. Let's talk about a big event, and it really is one of the monumental events that comes to Rhode Island. It came here 3 years ago, is it?
2015.
The Volvo race. It's a global race of the top sailors in the world. It is a big event. The numbers just came out of Spain. They had a stopover in Spain. They're coming to Newport in a couple months, but the Spanish numbers were remarkable. They measured that it was about €100 million impact on the Spanish economy, and there's no reason why that can't have, although we would put in dollars, that kind of impact into the Rhode Island economy. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So the race will come to town around May 10th, all the boats, and then the race day is May 19th. In 2015, we saw $47 million to our economy. That was the impact. 131,000 people went to that village. So in numbers that Spain saw, it's about 10% growth. So we're hoping for that too. And we are infusing the marketplace. You guys are wonderful advertising partners with us. So you're helping us to push this message out. We're doing some promotion from the state level all the way down the coast, targeting sailors and port cities, and we're really hoping that this will help to spur even more people to come to Rhode Island.
We lived in Newport at the time, and it was really remarkable. In May, on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe even Friday and Saturday, the town is not exactly bustling in May.
Right.
What was remarkable was in Newport in May, on a Monday and a Tuesday night, restaurants were packed, the streets were packed, and everywhere you turned, somebody spoke a different language. This was not, per se, folks driving down from Marblehead, Mass., who we want to come down and enjoy the events. This was people from all over Europe and South America and Asia flying in and spending 10 days in Newport hotels and inns and B&Bs. It was really, it was quite an event.
Well, and that is the thing. The international consumer, the international tourist is someone that we love because they're going to come and they're not going to come for a night. They're not going to spend the time with their aunt. They're going to come and they're going to rent a hotel room.
Right.
And that's where most of the impact came from, were hotel rooms and international travelers. And we see so many from Canada that come down. We know that that's a big market for us, but it's a really exciting time, and we're really lucky to have this, the only North American stop.
The other amazing part of it, we had gone over, Newport Film had an event, Film Newport had an event that week, and that was our first visit to the village, and the village is not what you expect. This is not Rocky Hill State Fair. This is really a first class. If you've been to any of the major sporting events, an all-star game or U.S. tennis down at Arthur Ashe or anything like that, take that and put it on steroids.
Right.
Because it's a remarkable venue. and Fort Adams doesn't look like Fort Adams anymore.
No, it's taken over, and this year will be even bigger and better. And there is so much, and it is free. People should know that this is a free event, so you can come down. There will be things for kids to do. They partner with DEM, so we talk about sustainability and all kinds of great green things. But there will be climbing walls and fish tanks and all kinds of stuff for kids to do, and then bars for the parents, and then on race day you sit right on the ocean and you watch this amazing race happen right off of our shores.
The other nice thing is the athletes, the sailors, who come from all over the world, and these very interesting teams, an all-women's team and teams from all over, are really accessible, and they're involved in kind of spreading the word of sailing and being ambassadors. This is not when you go to a top tier pro event, many times you can't get access to the athlete. This is the opposite. They want to be involved. They want to talk to people. It's really a remarkable situation. Is Rhode Island ready for it? Our bridge is working?
Our bridge will be ready. There will be no construction. Potholes will be filled. Right. We will be absolutely ready for it.
We're bringing a global event, and oh, by the way, our bridge doesn't work. Okay, so we've got the bridge thing down this time. The Braga Bridge is fixed for the first time in 20 or 30 years. So we got two of them. How's Mount Hope? I haven't been over Mount Hope in probably 10 or 20 years. So we're looking good on the bridge side.
We are.
Access to it, availability, transportation, all of those things.
Well, I would say, Newport hotels are filling up, which is great. We want that. We also feel like, and even in our marketing materials, we're hoping the ferry is running so that folks can stay in Providence.
Have you mentioned it to the ferry people yet?
I have.
Okay, good.
They're in the RFP process, so hopefully it's figured out. But
they're not going to crash it.
Well, that happens. So there's all other places to stay. South County is right over the bridge. Right. We've got all these, local launches that run, from Jamestown. So I think, you could stay outside of Newport and still have a great, time.
You'll see some impact in Providence. I mean, if it
you
builds the way, if you see the way it built like it did in other countries, in those host ports, from over the 3-year cycle, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's one of those beautiful events that Newport's really good at hosting, whether it's jazz festival or folk festival or tennis hall of fame. They're good at it. They like it. Kind of thing. Let's skip over and talk a little bit about tourism campaign.
Sure.
Congratulations,
Thank
you under your leadership broke a new tourism campaign, and people liked it. So I want to congratulate you for that.
Most importantly, tourists like it. We're seeing tourists like it. Click on it. Click and book trips here. So
and they're not smirking at us.
And
the words cooler and warmer not involved in any way, shape, or form. Correct. It really is. It's a smart campaign. Nail, a Providence ad agency, does a lot of good work on a lot of different fronts. Built a campaign, and it just looks, touches, feels Rhode Island-y.
It really does, doesn't it?
It does.
I'm so proud of it. I love it. And I will say the numbers that we are seeing are amazing. We had put this plugin into our website to track ad tracking.
Yeah.
It's incredible. We have spent about $400,000 on this leg, if you will. We have seen $650,000 return on just hotel investment.
That's
so over
right.
3,000 hotels. So that's 17% of what the traveler will spend when they come here. And this is in the shoulder season.
Yeah, that's
right. So it's doing beyond our wishes, and we are more than thrilled.
So we're right in downtown Providence. I think people have seen, yesterday we had the live cam going outside, and it was crazy. There was nothing going on outside. We were just showing the snow, and every now and then a RIPTA bus would come down. Tons of people were watching it. Thousands of people over the course of 3 hours watched a camera looking out the window. So I think people
get
get
something going here.
We got something going. Forget this live music. We can show a street. What is amazing down here is when you come into the office on the weekend, it is busier with tourists on the weekend than it is during the week. I'll wait to beat up Stefan on the weekday problems, but you deserve all the credit for the weekends. It really is amazing how many tourists are in downtown Providence on a Saturday and Sunday. And Sundays, you cannot come down here and find a parking place. That has never happened in my lifetime before.
Well, it is attributable to also the G Pub and the Dean, and we've got lots of great attractions here. You know, I mean, our universities, and you know, so we're doing
Yeah, but
a good job putting the word out.
universities
That's
were
right.
always here.
Yeah, they were.
This is different.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
feels different. It looks different. The clientele's different. They look to be affluent.
Yeah.
They look to be engaged. They're walking around from place to place. I think it's also an opportunity. Kobe Dennis was on with us earlier, one of the candidates for mayor, and before he came on, he said, you know, we could really build a Nashville-style music
Oh, absolutely.
opportunity. And we're seeing the number of great musicians who want to appear on the Alex and Ani Lounge
Right.
is tremendous. And I really do think it speaks to, we have so much creative talent, giving them venues and opportunities
Absolutely.
to be able to come into Providence and enjoy it.
And I think, again, we are, you know, people, these bands go from New York to Boston.
Yeah,
so they
all the
come
time.
right through Rhode Island. I mean, we lived in New York for 20 years, and we're seeing bands here that we used to see down there all the time. I mean, it's
Right.
amazing. That would be like the next thing I would love to really think about is how we can do, you know, and certainly we've got jazz and folk, and we would never, you know, but partnering with those guys too, because
Absolutely.
they know how to do it. And figure out how we can do
J
another
Suite's
big music.
J Suite's
I know.
getting too successful. The tickets
I
sell
know.
out the day they go on.
Really do.
Right.
I know. He's doing something right down there.
We've been partners on jazz with them for about 4 years, and every year it gets bigger and bigger. And this year the warning was they were going to cut back the budget because it's getting so successful. I'm like, I don't want to get blamed because we were so successful and lose revenue. That doesn't seem fair.
Don't do a good job, Josh.
Yeah, right. Oh, we're gonna push for complete incompetence. Let's talk about that. The energy is starting to build on these types of things, and the campaign that you're running, the tourism campaign. And if you haven't seen it, it's on GoLocal. I think we have all the videos. Although I think
got
we
a
just
few
got
new
a couple
ones,
new ones
right.
that we'll be posting. It really is targeted at that regional young couple, millennial couple who's looking to have an experience on a weekend, wants to get away for 3 or 4 days. How do we get them? How do we continue to build things that attracts them up here?
That's right. And I was talking to a region this morning. I mean, we've had some new, you know, great experiences here. Rail Explorers down in Newport. That thing was sold out all summer long. Again, a new experience. And we got some pickup with them on CNN, and then that was picked up by the AP. So they just were flooded. So
Yeah.
we need to continue, and that I think is what we're talking about as a tourism regions and myself. What else can we do for these folks?
Absolutely.
How else can we help them to bring in attractions? Because that is what's going to continue. Bringing people here, bringing money to the economy, but then bringing new attractions, new hotels, new things, and I think it really is happening, and I agree. I feel it too. I mean, I grew up here, and this feels like a totally different place.
Well, thank you for being on. We're going to be talking regularly about Volvo as this thing builds, and talking outwards and pushing this message out. This interview will run up on our Worcester site, etc. Anything else people need to know about Volvo and getting ready for it? And is there any danger? You know, it can't get sold out because it's a free event, but any good as we get closer, giving tips to how to get there, when to get there, what all the attractions are?
Yeah, I mean, I would say visit rhodeisland.com. You will find the Newport Volvo homepage on our site, but then there's also places where you can stay, where you can get your transportation, things that you can do, restaurants you can go see. But I would say plan.
Great.
You know, plan ahead.
We're going to be right back. Kate Nagel's going to be right back at the 3 o'clock hour. She's going to have United States Senate candidate Bob Flanders on. And then I'm back with Brown Athletic Director Jack Hayes. And then Kate's got more guests. So it is a rock'em sock'em afternoon. We'll be right back. Thanks so much.